Hello, hello, hello. We're starting the stream in about 7 minutes. If you're hearing this, let us know if the audio is good. Let us know if the audio is good. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Office Hour Module 3. Let us know if the audio is good. With me today we have Vinny,
Yes.
we got Steve,
Hey guys.
and we got Dennis live from Moscow. Let's say hi
Hola, привет.
to Dennis. Dennis, how are you?
Doing good, man. How are you doing? How are things in LA?
It's,
Didn't ask you before.
it's good, man. Nice weather, really cool. It's a really good week. How's the weather in Moscow?
Summer, like the last days, and that's it. You will see me depressed in a few days.
Nice, nice. We don't want that. All
Nah,
right,
I'm
cool.
joking. I'm joking.
So Dennis is here. He's gonna check back and give us a State of the Union in a little bit.
Yeah.
But first of all, I wanted to do a little house cleaning for the course, and that sort of gets us to the point where more people join us. I can see there's a bunch of people in the chat room. Let us know that you're here in the chat room, who you are, where you're watching from, what time it is. Um, let's do that. Did, did people say the audio is good? Audio
Yes,
is
good.
good. Awesome. All right. So I want to get started. First of all, that we are starting a phase of reworking the course or reiterating. I don't want to say reworking, that sounds too big. We want to add some really crucial lessons where we feel like we can do more, and we want to also maybe implement some new ways of doing feedback, all that kind of stuff. Before we really commit to the changes that we're making, we'd like to hear from all of you to let us know what's working great and what you think would be some good ideas to improve the course, stuff that you don't like. So there's a questionnaire, and Vinny, maybe you can put it in the chat room one more time.
Sure thing.
And if you could take a moment and fill that out, maybe right now while you're listening, it's not going to take more than 10 minutes or later. And just sort of rate the course and give us your feedback. That would be much appreciated. It's going to really help us make sure we're doing the right things, the right improvement. I also want to say that I spent the last 2, 3 weeks doing personal Skype sessions or Zoom sessions now. Skype is out, we're doing Zoom, and talking to various students. And I picked some that are super advanced in the course because we can sort of track what videos you've watched already. We can see obviously in the Discord group what you've submitted, and Dennis is sort of keeping track of the scenes that you submit. And I also spoke to people that sort of maybe got stuck in Module 1 and haven't really revisited the course and wanted to find out from them where they're at and what's going on. So I did about 10 of those interviews, and that created some real cool insights. But it's good to hear from everybody to sort of make sure that the data that we have really represents the entire community. So please do the questionnaire. Thank you. Um, so that's number one. Number two is we are basically finished boot camp. We picked a winner. Boot camp, I should say, is was like an experiment, successful, where we offered you the opportunity to cut a scene from a real feature. We're working with Harper, who's the director of Painted, and he gave us the dailies for a scene, and you were able to apply. And then we picked, I think, 10 candidates that cut that scene. We reviewed those scenes. He picked a couple of people that he interviewed. He ended up working with one of you guys, and they made a deal. And I'm happy to say that Didi, I don't know if you're in the chat room, but he got the job and he did really incredible work. I really liked the scene that you did. He took it. He did actually two scenes, which is not the reason why he got picked, but he did one that was kind of more of a Terrence Malick version, very non-linear and experimental, and he did a straight cut of the scene. And both versions, I actually felt like the straight version really spoke to me as well. So, congratulations for that. It's exciting to see that you're were able to take this challenge in the course and get something out of it. And
What is his name, Sven?
Didi,
His name?
Didi, I think he's from the Netherlands.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
I spoke to him actually, and his background is really corporate editing. This is the first time for him to do narrative work, and he does some amazing stuff. Like he has some big clients. Like one is like a big beer company, that is doing like commercials on the soccer championships league or stuff like that. And so he technically and so on, he's great. He's awesome, but he's really just missing that opportunity to do dramatic work, narrative work, and I think he really embraces the course for that opportunity. And he said like he's getting out of his comfort zone more. He's actually starting to network locally more, going to other events, reaching out to filmmakers in his area, to not just do this feature that he's cutting now, but to really re-energize, refocus his career towards that. At some point, he can make that leap and really do what he cares about. And that's sort of what we're going to be talking about today, anyway, in terms of career strategies and branding. Um, so congratulations, Didi. We're gonna do more boot camps as they come up. I always, every once in a while, I try and pitch this idea to somebody that offers me a job, and usually at this point, I have to turn down more jobs than I can actually take because I'm either busy or maybe the budget doesn't quite work out or whatever the reason is. But if I feel like it's a worthwhile project, I want to definitely introduce the idea to do another boot camp. And so that's going on with that. I also wanted to let you know that we're working on the brand editing module. We got feedback that it's sort of missing a case study in there, which I think the case study in the documentary is really awesome. And so I went out and through a friend, I was able to get a high end commercial editor and music video editor. His name is David Gesselbauer. He's in Germany. And we spent a good 2 hours going through his work. Like he did a commercial with Mercedes that is starring Roger Federer, the tennis player, and we're going through how he did the selecting, how they came up with the concept, and what his job is as the editor. So that's currently in editing, and that lesson will be out soon. It's going to be quite a long lesson. Might be like a 30-minute, 25-minute lesson. So that's that. Before I ask you, Dennis, about the state of the course, maybe we'll dip into the chat room and sort of let me know if people, like, where are people from? What time is it where they're from? Um, Vinny or Steve?
Right. Yeah. So we have a little bit of a lag, so we'll just have to bear with that a bit. But so far, people are just kind of saying hi to each other. I see some people from Kansas City. Hungary.
Yeah, I see one in Hungary at 7
Brazil.
p.m. over there.
Yeah, Brazil. See some Brazil guys.
That's Yana. Hi, how are you? I see
Yeah.
Colin in there. Yeah, Colin, you did the boot camp as well. I remember your scene. It was good. Colin, did you get a call from Harper? Let me know. I really enjoyed your scene. Okay, good. So, Dennis, give
Well,
us a little bit of a sense of the chat room, where the students are at, how things are going in the course.
yeah, in the Discord, right? Yeah.
In the
So
Discord,
yeah, since the last time we talked in well, it was like 1 month and a bit, right? The last time we had this call, and basically at that time there was more activity in the modules 1 and 2. Since then, the activity has decreased a bit, but I also seen a bit more activity on module 4 maybe, and a few other people. It's not a lot, but a few other people have submitted their scenes for the documentary and for the branded scene, right? So that's great, because at the beginning there were only like 1 to 3 people doing that. So there's a bit more activity, and of course there were some a bit more new students who got into the course, or people who left. I mean, they joined and they did nothing for a couple of months, and they now are finally getting into the course and doing module 1 and module 2, which is great. And the other big change, which I think people have really are getting into it, is the Whipster thing. Whipster is this platform where we are now submitting them. For those who don't know, is this platform where we're submitting now the scenes, right? So we upload the video, and anybody can go inside and leave comments. about something they catch, or maybe something small on the screen. I don't know, something like that.
Yep.
And people are really loving it. I love it because I'm not only using it for this, but also with one client who is actually also loving it, and it's really useful.
Nice.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome. I mean,
yeah,
Whipster,
besides,
great opportunity. Sorry, I'm going to jump in here for a second.
yeah.
So it's an online collaboration platform, and the great thing about it is you can have your scenes, your scene work sort of stacked up as versions, so people can easily jump back and forth and see the progress. And the other thing is they can leave time code based notes basically on that frame where they have the note, and they can even potentially draw something or point to something.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
really cool. So yeah, cool. Sorry, go ahead.
It's really nice because if somebody leaves a comment, somebody can reply to that comment and so forth, right? And not everyone needs to leave the same feedback on some part of the scene, but they can just say +1 or say no, maybe I do like it, or anyway, people can leave replies, which is really nice.
Yeah. In the chat room, let us
And
know if you're using Webster and if you like it. Okay, keep going.
yeah, no, that's it. I mean, the vibe is always positive. People are helping each other. Of course, it's not the same as it was at the beginning, where everybody was talking and leaving their scenes. But the community is there. When there is need for help, people are helping. And yeah, we should just keep going. I mean, for those, there are a lot of people who haven't submitted scenes yet. So if you are here and listening, go ahead, take your time. Like we always say, take your time. Don't no rush. It's not a competition, but I mean, at least submit your scene for scene 1 and then move on to scene 2.
Yeah, I
Hey,
think
module
that's
2.
going to be one change for generation 2, and then it will apply to everybody, is that we're somehow going to establish some form of virtual deadlines or keeping you accountable if you want to. For some people, that's really helpful, and that's some of the feedback
Mm-hmm.
that I got, is that they wish there would be more of like goals defined, and we're currently thinking about maybe creating cohorts, groups of students that are sort of starting at the same time per module, and that they get their own room and they check in with each other, show each other the work, and then also the community manager sort of oversees those rooms and is there to guide or to help. That's one way we're thinking. Another way is I still get a lot of requests to get more feedback from us, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that is something that we can institute in a we have an idea how to do that. So it's very hard to do it on every cut that you do and everything you post. It's too many students and it's too few people of us. But if we at least could have like a systematic giving you feedback for your sort of final exam in each module, I think that is something we can think about and saying, okay, maybe you get a lot of peer reviews, you work on the scene a couple of times, you have like 3 versions, you feel like you're ready to move on. Maybe there's a way you can submit the scene to us, and we're gonna develop some criterias where we look at, okay, is it polished, is the pacing right, like, I mean, obviously whether something is good or bad is very subjective, but I think there's some objective criterias that we can give you guidance on, and then we can also say something like, I really was engaged, or like, you lost my interest. That's something that I think we're working with and something that we might be introducing.
Yeah.
Um, cool beans. Oh, I also wanted to say regarding this Discord, sometimes some people are super active in the course, and sometimes it gets a little heated. Like we try and sort of standard and say this is a safe space and this is a supportive group, but sometimes people get into each other a little bit, and we try to interject. But I want to encourage everyone, when you see that, not to feel scared to post. Like, I have a sense there are a lot of people. I actually spoke to one student specifically who said that she's monitoring the Discord almost every day at the beginning, and now maybe once or twice a week, but she's not posted once. And one of the reasons is that she feels like she's not qualified, or she feels like she's not ready. And this is coming from somebody who's working, so working editor, and she's working for like some corporate company doing um, high-end videos cutting, and she still doesn't feel comfortable posting in the Discord. So, well, we want to encourage you to put yourself out there. That's part of becoming a go-to editor, is to have no fear, to embrace um, rejection sometimes, or negative feedback, even though we sort of discourage to be negative per se, but I think it's good to be constructive or to point out something that might be not working. But I will really want to encourage everyone to go out there and post more. And we sort of now streamlined the Discord as well. Dennis, you created an FAQ so that all the good stuff that appears is now accessible. Maybe talk a little bit about the FAQ, what that is, and where it lives.
Yeah, so basically I went through all the channels in the Discord from the beginning till now, and I collected all the main questions people were having since the beginning of the creation of the course. And I also went through the questions that were posted in the course in each one of the lessons in module 1 and module 2, basically, because it's where people are posting more. And well, I just created a document. It was like 8 pages long, and it's divided into some categories like basic editing, getting along with the course, career development, and I think basically all the major questions are there answered. So if you have a concern about how to do something in DaVinci, how to do I don't know, how to go about some certain kind of editing, what to do, for example, in your career, in your job, if there is a client who, I don't know, who is misbehaving or doing something nasty, or you have a conflict with a client, maybe there's a question in there in the FAQ, sorry, that might be answering that question. And if not, just put it in the Discord group, and I might add it also to the FAQ. But again, if you have any question about the course or the exercises or some technical question, go there, check out if if the question is there, because the answer is there. And if not, go in the group and just let us know what is your question.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be a document we're going to keep updating, and it's going to become more and more valuable over time.
Yeah, it's in the course, right? It's in the module.
I
Which
put in
one module
module
is it?
one at the end of module one so that you sort of
Uh-huh.
stumble upon it right away. No, you can always check back. And actually, yesterday I had a meeting with Eric, who's one of the camp leaders, and he's
Mm-hmm.
currently creating kind of a workbook for module one, so you can actually read along as you do the lessons as well. So that's coming. Very good, Vinny. I see you posted a question here from a student.
Yep.
What's that question?
So it's from Spriglet. It says, how about people identifying themselves as a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and people can temper feedback accordingly? And this is in regards to feedback within the Discord server.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. I wouldn't say that's something you should do all the time, but I think it's good to, if you are if you are asking a question, or if you are asking for feedback, to maybe qualify where you're coming from, what your experience is. So I like that as well. And I saw also that Spriglet had another thing where he said, or she, I recently felt a little disheartened and I'm hesitant to post. So that's, I hear you. I wish, let us know what we can do to encourage you more to post, because it is a great community. And even though it is, I don't know, 400 students, there may be 250 in the Discord, there's still a bunch who haven't found the Discord or chose not to join. It's probably only 20, 30 people that are really active, and we want to see where everybody's at, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah. And part of growing is having that communication with each other too. So even if it can be scary, it's important to share. But we'll definitely look into ways we can get you guys to feel a little safer in that chat room.
Okay. So I'm just reading that some say I have low volume on my mic, so I just cranked up my mic. Let me know if this is better or if this is too loud. And if that doesn't work, I can crank it on the Zoom as well. All right, good stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and start with module 3. It's about personal branding and career strategies. Everyone in the chat room, how do you define your brand in one sentence? Put it in the chat room. I'll get back to that. There's a couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the 7 steps to get from 0 to getting your dream job. That's number 1. Number 2 is I want to talk a little bit about networking, the sort of the questions that you should ask, or what's the first thing you're going to say when you are in a networking situation. And then
They're asking you to crank it up a bit more, Sven, on yours.
alright, I'm going to crank it up a little more. I want to take it over the top. How's this? Let us know if the audio is better. I raised the audio on this. Okay, and then at the end, I wanna go through your questions or your answers to how you see your brand. So the 7 steps to go from 0 to your dream job. And this is something that I'm working on, and I think it could become part of this course as well as like a checklist. The first thing is quite obvious, which is build your craft. And this is where the course can help you at the beginning, the early modules, where you just work with the software, you figure out all the technical stuff, figuring out how to get the dailies in, and work with the audio, which by the way, we are working with an audio expert to create a new lesson to just address audio, specifically in DaVinci Resolve and dipping into the Fairlight tab. So building your craft and then create and ship. That's all part of number 1. Creating stuff and shipping it is equally important. I want to encourage you to be constantly working on the stuff that you enjoy. And if you found your passion, if you defined your passion correctly, you should be having fun while you're doing this. This shouldn't be too hard. At least not at the beginning. At some point it might become a churn to be an editor, but it should, like the first 3 years of being an editor should just be a thrill for you. You should be so excited about just having the opportunity to cut anything. That's at least how it started for me. And that got me pretty far in just like working hard and thinking and breathing editing, which is crucial to become a go-to editor. Steve Jobs says real artists ship. And I think that's so true. So the fact that you are actually submitting stuff, that you're putting stuff on YouTube, that you are trying to connect to an audience is so important. Actually getting feedback from an audience, I personally value more than feedback from my peers or somebody that I look up to. I know at the beginning we all crave to hear from our teachers what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong, what we should be doing better. But that's only really an artificial replacement of having that relationship with an audience. And so build your craft, create and ship. That's step number 1. I also want to talk about 2 points. One is quality versus quantity. Especially at the beginning, quality doesn't really matter. Quantity is what matters. And I wish I would have realized that early on, that I shouldn't be too pissed off or scared or suffering from rejection just because my work sucks. That's part of the process. So doing a lot of work helps you overcome the quality problem. That's the best way. It's not doing all the research, soaking in all the information, scouring information, trying to attend every lesson. What's really important, and this is why the go-to editor is different than many other courses or even film school is. It's not about learning the lesson, soaking that in. It's about applying it in the exercises and taking action. And then really don't get paralyzed if stuff sucks and the audience that you're trying to please is letting you know that it's like they don't care. It's not interesting to them and they don't watch it. If somebody's not watching it, that means that they don't care. And that's what you need to overcome. You need to make people care. And you can't ask them to care. They're gonna naturally, organically care when you have a great story to tell. And that's what you need to figure out. And that's the hardest part of storytelling. Like I went to AFI, American Film Institute, and the biggest challenge for me was to write a script that is interesting, that actually has some drama in it. And this, and writing and editing is very similar. Um, that's number one. Maybe we'll take a couple of. Did we get a couple of one sentences of where we are with the?
I thought you said a word.
Oh, did I say a word?
I thought you said a word, but everybody's saying you said a sentence. I don't
Yeah,
know. So
I'm.
maybe a sentence or a word.
I would go with a sentence. What do we have so far?
So some words, advancing from Martin Massius, I think. That's one word, and then another was, let's see.
Storytelling, but hyphenated.
Yep, storytelling.
Steve, you probably have to project like crazy over there.
Okay.
Story first, from Carlin.
Okay, that's a good brand statement. I like that. It's a brand trait. We'll talk about that in a bit. How's the audio, by the way? Is the mic better now?
Yeah, they've been saying it's great.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna move on to number 2. Define your passion and brand. So if you're not passionate about your work, it's gonna be nearly impossible for you to become a go-to anything, to become an expert on anything. And by the way, Dennis, I turned off your mic. If you want to chime in, just wave at me, and then I'll turn your mic back on. It's really important to figure out what you really enjoy doing and do that early. So it starts off with, what are the types of movies I like watching? What are the type of TV shows I'm interested in? And then seeing, could I see myself cutting this? Would I really enjoy cutting this type of genre? Because you need to decide which ladder you're going to climb, and that's one of the trickiest parts of navigating in a career, because usually there is no single path on how you're gonna get to what you think is your dream job. Usually you're gonna have to like skip from one ladder to another and then hop over here, and the biggest risk you have is that you're gonna get stuck. But if you know what the end goal is, it's gonna be easier for you to stay focused on that. So define your passion and brand. Brand is a promise of an experience. A brand is what you're communicating to the director or the client of what you're all about. And there's a book that I can highly recommend. I think I do it in the course as well. It's called Primal Branding. And it really sort of looks at brands like Nike and so on, and see how they are so iconic and so specific about what their brand is about. And they have a creation story that's really important. Like, how did you get in there? Like, if you remember originally when I started selling the course on YouTube, the first thing I was doing is I was talking about my creation story, like how I got into editing, what was my first job, and how did that form me? What did I learn? This is really important for brands and clients to know, so that they know what they can expect from you. A promise of an experience. The creed, what do you believe in? And somebody said story first. That's part of the creed. Like, if you communicate that you're a storyteller, certain clients will respond to that, that really want to hire somebody that is a strong storyteller. And most companies don't even realize that that's what they need, but once they have an editor that is a storyteller, it makes their job so much easier. So even though you're just pushing buttons and you're really doing what the director is saying or the client is saying, if you're the one that is having a strong storytelling point of view and you communicate that as your brand, it's really cool. Some other things, I'm not going to mention all of them, but rituals is really important. So, for example, that we do office hour is now becoming part of the go to editor course brand. That's something you can expect. It's a ritual that we go through with every module, and once we're done with all the modules, we're going to keep going. Um, Sacred words. It's kind of almost like catchphrases or something. There's certain things that I will always talk about, that I will always come back to. So, for example, you hear me talking about engaging with the audience emotionally. That's a phrase that I live by as an editor. And you will also hear me say on the podcast, happy editing. Or you will see on the channel, just edit, which conveys the message that to be a good editor, you need to edit a lot. That's a very important message in terms of branding for the channel as well as me as an editor. Like I basically edit every day, and I enjoy doing it every day, and that's part of just edit. Um, okay, and then I'll leave the others in the book. I can highly recommend this book. Um, do we have any notes, any feedback in the comments?
So
Okay,
we got
Iwan
some.
says, "What's yours? Brand in one word sentence." Well, if it's only one word, I would say I'm a storyteller. Storytelling. That's one word. If it's like a one sentence, and there's a worksheet by the way in the course where you can define your personal brand story. And I think one you did it, um, and one says it's all about the emotion. Yeah, that's good. I like that. I mean, emotion is one of the key elements of great editing. It's emotion, it's character, it's storytelling. Um, so let me see if I can find real quick. Are there any other questions?
So we got a comment in there
Yeah, go for it.
from Martin Macias. Inspiration for me was wondering why movies made me feel great.
It's great. Yeah. Martin? Do you remember the movie that made you want to become a filmmaker? What's that one movie? I know I have one. You might not have one, but if if people ask me like, what's that movie or what are my top three movies, I can just rattle them off, and they never change. They're just ingrained with me. I don't know why my mouse is not moving.
Moving up there. You're up there. That's why.
Oh, that's
Yep.
that's another monitor up there. Okay,
Too
cool.
many screens.
Alright, so let's see. Okay, personal brand story, right? There's this worksheet. It's in module 3. It comes after lesson 313. And I'm just going to quickly um, read those out. Identify yourself. I am. When you meet someone new and they ask what kind of editing you do, you should have an answer to it. Like, my answer is I'm an editor that does primarily independent film and documentary. That's who I am. Who's my audience? Well, it would be film festivals, it would be the general audience, theatrical. Um, what are their defining characteristics? They crave drama, or they want to learn something. They seek inspiration. Pinpoint the problem. I think the biggest problem with editing is that it's not thinking about the audience. It's flashy, flash and bang editing is a term. It's not telling stories. What motivates me? I am addicted by getting feedback from an audience. Like, that's why I keep doing the YouTube channel. I can't wait to launch a new video and see if it pops, or what people have to read in the comment section. That's like, I that's my diet. Explain the core benefit. I already talked about it. It's like I'm a great listener. I approach each film from the character's point of view, and I look for drama and how I can connect the audience emotionally to that. So answer those questions in the course, and then you get a little bit closer to your personal brand story. Okay, I see there's some questions here.
So people were naming off some movies, so that'll be fun to.
Okay,
talk about.
so we got The Killer from John Woo. What are my top 3 movies, Alyssa wants to know? My favorite drama is Prince of Tides. Barbara Streisand directed, and I believe she won an Oscar. My favorite visual emotional movie is The Big Blue, Le Grand Bleu, French one. I don't know if I pronounce this correctly. Luc Besson's earlier film. It's my favorite Luc Besson film. It's amazing. It's about deep sea diving and dolphins and so on. I saw that actually as a kid in a theater, and it just blew me away. And then the last one, favorite suspense, is Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock. I think it's the perfect contained movie where you just have one set and it's all about audience engagement. It's great. But the movie that really defined me and said I want to become a filmmaker is Dead Poets Society. But that's a longer story why that is. Okay, Yana says hers was The X Files. Steven says Pulp Fiction. Ooh, Cinema Paradiso. Yeah, that's a great one. Oh, we should do a podcast episode about that. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna. What time is it? It's 10:36. I'm gonna get through this. So far I have built your craft, create and ship, relish rejection, define your passion, brand, and make sure you're on the right ladder if you can. Number 3, track your status, goals, strategies, and tactics. And I'm currently working on a Google Doc that I want to publish in the course where you can sort of start off with what are the movies that I like? What are the editors that I adore? That, like, to me, I can recognize their editing, or I look forward to seeing what they do. Like Joe Walker comes to mind as an editor, or Margaret Sixel, Thelma Schoonmaker, all these. And then start tracking them, almost stalking them in a way. Like they all have social media, and they don't have many followers. Like Joe Walker has maybe 2,000, 3,000 followers. So you could probably get hold of him if you needed to. Instagram, same thing. Those are the two mediums. Maybe LinkedIn. I'm not sure. So start figuring out how can I get hold of these people and when will they be in town. If you happen to be in a big market, there will be some panels and events and festivals that you can go to where these people will be invited and will speak. And maybe it's not Joe Walker, but it is somebody of some form of statue that you can see. And the first step is to just show up and take it in. There's so much you can learn from listening to people talking about their craft. And then down the road, think about walking up to them and maybe making a connection. Then sort of define your big dream and turn that into small goals. And that's something you could do in this document where you're like, okay, my dream is to work as an assistant editor on a TV show like Better Call Saul. So that could be your dream. Well, how can you get there? Specific steps. You could learn the craft. You could go to a panel where Kelly Dixon is invited, who's the editor of Better Call Saul, or one of them, and you can listen in, or you can listen to a web stream, a live web stream, or a podcast. I think they still do a podcast. The editor started that originally with Breaking Bad, and you can then reach out to her and ask interesting questions or point them to something valuable.
She's amazing to listen to if you guys get the chance, so go check her out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you know if the podcast is still going? Or?
I don't know if the podcast is still going or not. I know she was working on it, but it's definitely a huge learning experience every time you get to listen. So we'll try to put a link in the Discord maybe later. If that works. Yeah.
There are a bunch of really good podcasts, including ours, but the Art of the Cut started a podcast where they interview a lot of the top editors. Mm-hmm. There's Going Postal, which is really cool. They're a little more infrequent, but they have somebody like Eddie Hamilton on there I listen to. So listening to those will definitely sort of get a sense of the market and the players, the people that are there. If you're in LA, go to Lazy Puck once a month, show up. It's a post-production networking meeting. Like once you go 2-3 times, you know who the regulars are. I'll be there. You can talk to me. And then figure out like really executable tactics that you can do. That's all part of track your status, goals, and strategies. Number 4, find mentorship. And that's a little bit of a tricky one, but you should definitely seek out mentors. It's always helpful to have people that you can um, have listened to questions that you might have, give you answers, and people that really want to see you benefit. And everybody that is doing well, or most of them, especially editors, are very giving people. And if you like Tatiana Regal, once I heard her say, she's the one that cut I, Tanya, said, like, I have never not answered an email. If somebody sent me a smart email and I had a question about assistant editing or something, I'm always open to listen, and chances are you're gonna hear from me. Um, and she probably hired, I think, 2 or 3 of her assistants by just people reaching out to her. Um, it's really good to have mentors, and I mean, obviously, you don't want to stalk them. You don't want to be overbearing, or sometimes it doesn't work out. The people are busy. People might already sort of picked their favorites, or they're already working with somebody for a while. So you have to be a little open and try a couple of things, embrace rejection, not hearing from people, and just don't take it personally. So that's number 4.
No questions yet. People are just kind of talking about their movies still. But
Okay,
listening in.
cool.
Did you have a mentor when you were first editing stuff?
I had a I had a mentor that didn't know that was my mentor, which is James Cameron. I mean, I ended up working for him, and I learned so much while just listening or getting his notes. And I was never like, hey, by the way, James, I feel like you're my mentor. This is really awesome. That would have made for a really awkward situation. So I was just like silently soaking up all this wisdom. And it was really like one of the lessons that I'll never forget is he's like, I was filming him. Like, initially, I was the onboard documentarian on the Titanic expedition. I told the story many times. And he walks up to me and he whispers in my ear, like, never put the camera where the light is. And I look over and I see the light is right behind me, and I'm like casting a shadow on his face. And if I'm not casting a shadow, his lighting is completely flat and uninteresting. By just moving like 45 degrees or more, the lighting becomes more interesting, more dramatic. And that's something that, like, now I'm so aware of, that, like, where's the light in relationship to the camera? Super important. um,
Let's see.
Okay, number 5 is networking, and this is where I'm going to take a little bit of an excursion. Who in the chat room loves to network? Who's like, that's their favorite part of the industry? That's like, if you couldn't edit and just talk to people, that would be all. If you could just make money talking to strangers, let us know in the chat room. Um, Probably crickets.
That's how I found you.
And then I'm gonna ask you also, what's the best way to talk to somebody, to walk up to a stranger? What's the first thing you could say, and that will most likely get you a small conversation? Um, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna come back to it, but I want to hear from you. Number 6 is kick down back doors, and this is really important. There is not one way of becoming an editor. There's every everybody's path to being successful is different. There's a little luck involved. There's a lot of luck involved, but there's also preparation that gets you to be able to take advantage of that luck. Um, you need to find a way how to kick down a backdoor. What's a backdoor? A backdoor is an opportunity that doesn't exist on paper. Like, if you're just responding to ads on Mandy.com or job offerings, sending out resumes, maybe even cold, that's not. The chances are you're not going to be successful most of the time. I mean, you can play the numbers game, and maybe you might get a meeting if you send out 100 resumes. But I think the better strategy is to find a back door. I don't know if you remember, but last time we had an office hour, I had Morgan sitting in the background, and she kicked down a back door. She approached me through the internet, and I'm not encouraging everybody to send me resumes or their shorts because chances are most of the time I won't be able to respond. But she did it. She got my attention. I watched her short. I really liked something in her resume that was very specific to what I needed. So I set up a Skype call and I dug a little deeper and I could figure out that she can back up what was she was offering. And then within 10 15 minutes I'm like, okay, let's do an internship. That's what she wanted. She needed to get some credit for her film school. We figured it out to for her to come over and get a little per diem and be able to work here for six weeks. I think she was there, and she was a tremendous asset to the office. Like I immediately put her to work, and she never complained. She embraced it. She knew she had the craft down. She knew the software. I didn't have to walk her through workflow much. I kind of had to just set it up and say, go figure it out. And she ran with it, and she was super productive. And then in return, I was able to teach her, and I would take her to every meeting that I had or every like engagement where I could. We went to UCLA for an event. We went to USC for a conference where I actually met with Dr. Karen Perlman up for the first time. She's the one from the Science of Editing series on YouTube. She got to meet her. I asked a friend of mine to do a tour of his studio that she attended, all kinds of stuff. So I think it was great for her, and she deserved it because she really was able to fit in and provide value. And being able to promise that value to somebody where it's almost dumb not to take it is really the key to kicking down a back door. And there are many other back doors, like the way that I got my James Cameron job, total back door. So, are there any people answering the question about networking?
So a lot of people are saying they're shy and they don't do it. But I saw one from Didi Van Vree, I think. It
Yes.
says, if you like networking the best, you are not an editor, you are a producer.
Yeah.
I think this is fun to address. What do you think?
Yeah, so Didi, first of all, it's Didi, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations on winning bootcamp. Yeah, I hate networking as well. I'm super shy. I'm never comfortable. I'm getting better with it. And to be honest, I enjoy that I'm now at a stage where people walk up to me as opposed to I'm walking up to people. It's much easier that way. But if it doesn't happen, I still make myself walk up to people. And at the beginning, I don't like I don't I'm not too hard on myself. Like if I need to ghost an event where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like once they're done and I have nobody to talk to, it's okay for me to leave. But it's also okay for me to stay. And usually what happens is the longer you stay at an event, the easier it gets to talk to people. If you stick it out all the way to the end, that's usually where the really interesting conversations happen, or where things like thin out where you can actually have a real conversation. So just number one, showing up, number two, sticking it out. Those two things already get you really far when it comes to networking. Any other questions?
Yep. So we have one from Martin. He says, what advice do you have for people who have imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome?
Yep.
Oh, what is that?
So imposter syndrome is basically thinking that
You're not worth it?
you're not as good or the kind of person that you are. That you're not the thing that
You're
you claim
faking
to
it?
be. Yeah.
To have courage and be okay with being found out. Like when I started working, whatever job I took, most of the time, if it's a step up, I always felt out of my element. I felt like I'm not qualified to do the job. Just ignore that and say, yes, I will figure it out. I will go out of my comfort zone. Yesterday I met with Eric, and he talked about how after doing the course, his mindset changed, and that he's okay with embracing being out of his comfort zone. So one thing that I asked him, for example, was, "Hey Eric, can you be our DaVinci Resolve guru?" And even though he had opened up the software, he wasn't quite he wasn't savvy on it. I'm just said, "I know you have what it takes to figure it out. Can you like do a course on it on lynda.com and then be there for the students to figure out all those questions?" Because for me personally, I hardly ever really fully understand the software. Even though I'm using DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut Pro 10, I don't know the best way to do things or the right way. I just like use the tool until it breaks to tell the story, keep it simple, that kind of thing. So I put him in a position where he need to get out of his comfort zone and say, "Yes, I will figure it out. I will try." And now he's really savvy on the software. It really helped him to learn a new tool, but also that modus of being out of your comfort zone is something that he carried forward. And from not having a job, he now has so much work that he has to like prioritize clients at this point, because he always said, "Yes, I can do it." He's working on a Premiere project for a client, and he wasn't really comfortable with Premiere, and he figured it out. And they really liked his positive attitude, that they ended up putting him in front of the client to just spend a day going through the footage with the client, because he just conveyed this confidence, even though he had no idea of what he was doing technically, that they would trust him to work with the client. So if you have an imposter syndrome, that is, we all do. When I started the YouTube channel, I pretended to be a YouTuber. I wasn't one. When I started working for James Cameron, I pretended to be an editor. I wasn't one. And that's part of the deal. Any other questions?
Got an interesting comment. So, got it from Erwin. He said, "One of my shorts got selected in a festival. I have to go alone. I'm really not sure how I'll manage to overcome." So, I think this is interesting. It's a bit of festival strategy, but
Yes.
also that networking a bit.
Yeah, this is a good one. Going to a festival on your own seems very daunting, but it's probably one of the easiest things to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I nowadays go to a festival even if I don't have anyone going with me. Like I have a film in the festival and the director can make it or whatever, or my friends don't want to go. And I don't really am that concerned. What happens in a festival is that if you fully embrace the festival, you're gonna be standing in lines a lot. Like if you see 3, 4 films, you're gonna be standing in lines for those 3, 4 times a day, and there's gonna be a person in front of you, and there's gonna be a person behind you, and all you really have to do is say one sentence, and you're gonna figure out if that person is gonna want to have the next 20 minutes, gonna want to have a conversation with you, or they're gonna just look at their phone. And so whenever I stand in line, I'm like saying, for example, "Hey, how's it going? Have you seen anything good today?"
Mm-hmm.
And then if they come back with, "Oh, you got to see this movie, it was awesome," or "This I went to this and this movie," you can be talking for 20 minutes just about the films that they've seen at the festival at that moment. And then once you kind of are at that point, you can dig a little deeper. What brings you to the festival? Why you're here? Oh, I'm actually representing this company, or I have a film here, or I just love going here because I'm from this town, and every year this is sort of the highlight for us. Whatever, they're either volunteers. There's so many opportunities why they're here at the festival, and to pick up on those nuggets really helps you then navigate the festival. Like if I talk to a volunteer, then I'm always like, okay, well, where can I eat? What's good? Where are the parties that nobody knows about, and so on. It's really really good intel, but it's very easy to get into conversations at festivals because there's always before and after the screening where people just stand around.
Right. And a good question I think you can ask somebody too, if you know they're a filmmaker, well, you can ask them if they're a filmmaker first, but if they have a film, ask them what it's about and when it's showing, and that kind of sparks a conversation.
Yeah, and go to that film. Like
Yeah.
if you feel like you had a really good conversation with somebody, make the effort and see their film. Walk up to them afterwards and say, "Hey, this was cool."
Mm-hmm.
And if it sucked, then still walk up to them and say, "Hey, this was cool."
Yeah. And if it's your first film festival, Something that you could do if you haven't been to a film festival before is go to one, not as a filmmaker, but just as a participant, and just go check it out and talk to the filmmakers. You're welcome to do that. So
Yeah.
it gives you a little bit of practice beforehand.
All right, Dennis, I'm gonna bring you back in. I totally noticed that I haven't paid attention to you. Um,
It was better.
okay,
That's
sorry.
sure.
So, for some reason, I covered you up. So if you waved at me, I totally didn't see you. My question to you, Dennis, is how are things in Moscow? Like, if you're networking in Moscow, and you told me up front, like this is also not your strong point. You don't really go out. But
Yeah.
did you go to any film festivals? For
No, my position as an editor here is very different from probably mostly everybody here in the course, because I am from Costa Rica and I live in Moscow because my wife is Russian, right? So
yeah,
everything I do, everything I edit is online. Like people like I work with you, so it's like an online relationship. But
which by the way, amazing job on the Netflix video that just came out that
thank you.
we
Well,
did.
we did it together. So,
Dennis and
but
I
thanks.
worked on that for several weeks. And good. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So no, in Moscow it's difficult because here, besides people not speaking very good English, most people don't speak English. So if you want to work here, you need to speak Russian, which I don't do very much. I mean, I speak some Russian, but I don't do.
Are you learning it?
And I'm learning, but man, this is difficult.
Are you taking lessons?
Yeah. I've been taking lessons for maybe 2 years, but I go off and on and off and on. So
Okay.
it's difficult language in a way. But because of the same subject, I can't work here, and also it's difficult to network because everything is in Russian. Most festivals, which there are not too many, unless somebody corrects me, there are not too many festivals. There was one about shorts, but it happened at the same time my daughter was born in July, so I couldn't go. um, but again, my situation is a bit not typical.
Yeah.
If I was in Costa Rica, probably I would go to more events if there were any.
I would
But
assume that the Moscow has an international film festival, right? Which
probably,
which means that there will be a lot of international filmmakers showing their films not in Russian. Um,
yeah.
so you have two great languages under your belt, which is Spanish and English. So that's gonna cover a lot of films that you could be seeing there, and be these filmmakers listening in on their Q and A's. Let me ask you this: do you know when the film festival is in Moscow?
No, it's something I really need to find out. I mean, I've been crazy because of my daughter that was born, but it's something it's been on the back of my mind that I really need to try harder to go to find out about these festivals.
Yeah,
And
and that could
even if it's just in Russian, I should go and see what can I find there, who can I meet.
yeah, and it's probably also a very international town anyway by now, right? So English is not that
No, it
uncommon.
is.
It
I
is.
mean, I mean, of course, English is known everywhere, but not too many people speak English here,
Okay. A little
unfortunately.
different than, for example, in
Yeah.
Berlin. Like, I recently was in Berlin and I walked on the street and I felt like I hear more people speaking in English than in German.
Of
Um,
course, Berlin, something else.
yeah, and that was like
Moscow,
new to me
Moscow.
because that wasn't like that before. But it's a trend that I think is keeps going as
Yeah.
with all European cities in general. Okay, so lesson learned, which is like once you figure out what it is that you want to achieve and you have a strategy, part of that strategy could be seeking out international festivals, making sure that if you're long term in Russia, that the language barrier needs to be somehow be addressed, and or seeking out international clients. Those are all tactics you could use to to wrong one right here to apply to forward your strategy. And life is busy. We're all busy. We all
Hmm.
have kids. Some of you. We all have dogs and cats,
Yep.
and so
Nope.
we need to still stay on track and make that all work. A lot of people are busy. Very few people are busy getting things done. Um, No, no, no. Shame on you, Dennis. You just had a baby, so you're excused.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, what's the first thing you should say in a networking? This is a question for the chat room. Did anybody answer that question?
So
If you're in a networking situation, what's the first thing you should say?
there's some before. Let me see. So some people said. Let me go back.
It's so simple. It's silly that I even ask, but it's something you should be aware of. Did anybody have anything?
Yeah, they were posting. The more you get out
Put
okay,
an example in
so
there.
the more you get out of your comfort zone, the more you'll train the muscle and get more comfort out of it. So Dennis, you said this, and I think that's important to say, right? And then Martin said, speaking of the back door, I usually run into problems where I don't want to let someone down. If I don't know how to do an effect or transition, so I recommend another editor.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah. So.
That's a tricky one. To say, oh, I can't do this. You should work with this guy. I would rather say, oh, I can't do this, but I can figure it out. I'll know this the next time we meet. Like, I would never
Research.
appear to like I give up. Would be my advice, but depends. Could be also situational. Anything else?
Let's see. Okay. So.
I see one. So you like movies?
Yeah.
That's not bad. What I like about this is that it's light. It's really important to say something light. You can't get like too specific or deep right away. That's where you want to end up.
Martin also said to start a conversation, an embarrassing story about me, so they feel at least a little bit better about themselves.
Okay.
So keep it lighthearted, like you said.
Yeah, it's good. So I'm gonna reveal it. The thing that always works is to say, "Hi, how are you?" It's an open-ended question, and you know what the answer is gonna be. It's gonna be, "Good. How about yourself?" And then you're like, "I'm great. My name is Sven, and it's so great to meet you." And before you know it, you're in a conversation. Because what are they going to say to that? Yeah, it's really awesome to meet you too. So the next thing is like, let's say they are a speaker on this. You could then say, I really enjoyed dot dot dot, whatever. Like, pick something that came up during that event where you're like, I really liked when you talked about this scene in the movie and what it took to get to this point, because I didn't realize that if you were doing it like this initially, it would like completely take away blah 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 from the character. But then what you did there was really eye opening to see. Now that I need to apply that too. And then the person is like, oh, that's really cool of you to say. So hopefully at that point they're gonna feed you something back. They're like, so are you an editor as well, or something like that? And then you can casually say, well, I'm starting to get into it. I'm really like right now pursuing blah blah blah, maybe assisting or something, but I'm really passionate about blah blah blah. And before you know it, you're already in a conversation without really having to say something super smart. And once you're in that state where that happens, really important to listen. Like, the more you can ask open ended questions at that point, the better you're off in that conversation, the better you come across. As opposed to trying to do an elaborate, like, it's hard, like, if I'm in a networking situation, somebody walks up to me afterwards and they pitch me their life story or the project that they're working on, and they start getting really, really detailed about what the challenge is that they're working on. I'm like zoning out, or I'm like, now I have to like really focus on you. It's really important to keep it super light, maybe spark a little bit of an interest or something where they're like, huh, they feel flattered, but to not get too deep into something that relates to your own work. It's okay if it relates to their work. Like, if you ask an open-ended question about how did you get to this point, or what was it like to work with blah blah blah, and they actually are happy to share this with you, and you do a little follow-up question, great. They can talk for as long as they want to in a conversation like this. Um, and that puts the pressure away from you. It alleviates the pressure because you have to talk less. All you really need to think about is, what is like a question, open-ended question for them to keep talking. Vinny, you know the difference between an open question and a closed question?
So an open question can open up that conversation a bit, and a closed question is going to be just maybe a short answer that's going to give you a really direct answer.
Yeah.
So you want to keep that conversation going. That could lead to other questions. So open-ended would lead to those other questions.
So the question that I just asked him, was it an open-ended question or a closed question? Let me ask you again.
No,
Vinny, do you
me?
know the difference between open-ended question and closed question?
What's an open-ended question, son?
So the question itself was actually a closed question because the answer would have been yes, and the conversation could have stopped right there. So instead of asking him, "Do you know the difference between this and that?" which sort of, I mean, luckily you went immediately on like explaining it, but the other way to ask the question could have been like, "Vinny, do you find what do you find hard about asking an open-ended question?"
Right.
Go ahead, answer that.
What do I find hard about
Yeah.
asking an open question? How to keep it open, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That was an open-ended question where I'm trying to sort of have him explain the why or the how. And a lot of open-ended questions is why did you do this or how did you do this, as opposed to do you like this or that, which would give you a yes or no answer. You want to avoid yes or no answers, questions that lead to yes or no answers. Um, let's get a sense of the chat room. Is this helpful to people? We'll get back to that. So once you're in that conversation, you don't want to take up too much time of that person because it's all about making a connection, and that connection should be meaningful and impactful. And so once you realize, oh, you have a really good thing going, but you do see that there are other people also wanting to chime in, the longer you occupy that space, the more uncomfortable the conversation will naturally become. So ask that one thing that you want to talk about and then end on a high. So, for example, well, I really enjoy talking to you right now, and I hope we can continue this conversation the next time. Would be like a way to end it. So something where you invite them to continue the conversation later on somewhere, which could then lead to, oh yeah, that'd be really cool. Why don't you send me an email? Or let me give you my card and reach out to me tomorrow, and then I have some other things that I can show you or so. This is the perfect scenario where you have a conversation that sort of invites the person that you're trying to network with to offer up their email and giving you the opportunity to follow up because there are some things that you can then further qualify in a closer conversation, a phone call, an exchange of an email, a coffee, whatever it is really that's the goal of networking is to open up a door and leave it open. Um, and then you sort of can move along. You can move aside. Like there's no need for you to now spend the entire evening with this guest. Let's say there's like a cocktail party afterwards or so. Once you made your mark, that's all you need. You follow up with an email and hopefully they'll respond. Sometimes they don't. I was at UCLA as a guest speaker, and what happened to me is there were a couple of people that walked up to me and said, "Well, why don't you reach out to me?" And there's one person specifically where I saw that they sent me their short and I didn't have time to look at it at the time, and I forgot to mark the email to look at it later. So then I forgot the name, I don't know, so I would have to go back and try and figure out that email. So it's a mistake on my part, but that sometimes happens that like these emails come in and you don't hear from that person because sometimes their mind isn't quite there and they haven't perfected their system yet. I have a fairly good system, but it didn't work out that time. Then don't be afraid to reach out one more time and say, um, like, thank you again. I don't want to bother you. Just in case you missed this email from me, I wanted to follow up and see if they respond. And usually at that point, they will respond if they have an interest. So, do we have anything in the chat room so far? to my earlier questions? Okay, fine. You guys are very quiet. It's a dialogue. I don't have to talk all the time. All right, cool. So that was number 5, networking. We talked about the kicking down the back door. It's 11:10. Oh, I see your daughter, Dennis. That's cute. I'm not gonna show you unless you give me permission. So I'm going to go to number 7, the last step that gets you from 0 to getting paid, and that last step is leveraging up, and that's where it's at. Is whatever your resources are you have right now are probably not gonna lead to you becoming a feature film editor tomorrow. So you have to find a way to leverage your way, and everybody has their own personal story. I remember Josh Beal, the editor from Counterpart, when I did the video with him, he talked about his origin story. He started off cutting weddings, and he did that, and it was very hard, but he worked on his craft. He built his craft. He got really, really frustrated with the genre because it's at some point it's the craft itself doesn't give you enough adrenaline anymore. You have to look for more things, bigger, better projects, challenges. And it just so happened that he was able to maneuver himself from wedding to corporate because one of the wedding clients was a guy that needed video work in his company. And he leveraged up to do corporate videos at that point. And from that point, he was able to, I don't quite remember how it was, but he was able to assist a person that was about to go to LA to do a TV show. And so then he made the move with him and assisted for him for several years, and then was able from there to eventually get a shot at becoming his own TV editor. And that's sort of where he's at in his career. And I would assume at some point he would like to make the move and go from cool scripted TV to cool feature film. And there might be another opportunity for him to leverage up if that's really what he's interested in. But these opportunities to leverage up always happen. For me, it was the opportunity came. I went out of film school. I helped a friend do a webcast on his indie film that got some attention, and I got a call from James Cameron's little brother that led to the opportunity to work on a prototype for a webcast, that led to the opportunity to go on the ship to Titanic, that led to the opportunity to become the night assistant on the film, that led to the opportunity to become an editor on the film. This is not something you can plan, or this path will never ever happen again. But each step is a leveraging up by being there and by embracing getting into that uncomfortable space of doing something new and presenting yourself as somebody that would be open to do that. So that's really, really the final step to leverage up. And these opportunities, they come and go, and if they go and you didn't take them, there'll be another opportunity down the road. It never stops. So sometimes these things work out and sometimes they don't. Sometimes I get an offer for a feature where I'm like, this is awesome. I love everything about it. It's a huge budget. They reach out an email and say, okay, if we're interested in meeting with you. I'm like, great. I love it. Let's meet whenever. And I never hear back from them. Like, I have no idea what happened. And I just have to move on. I mean, I can try one more time and see if I get more, but most of the time they just something else open up for them. Maybe there was another editor that suddenly came through that they were hoping to get, and that door closes, but there's many, many other opportunities down the road. So we are at 11:14. I see that Jana has something to say. I have problems to make a pitch for work. Edit or filmmaking. I'd love to hear something about it. I don't understand the question. What do you think, Vincent? She's asking.
I think she's asking, how do you pitch yourself out there? So taking what you have, how do you get work from your own work? How do you put your reel out there? How do you sell yourself?
Got it. Great. Yeah, so if you have a lot of great work in corporate land, but it's not representing what you really want to do, which I assume is to cut narrative feature films, you gotta find shorts. You gotta find weekend work where you can cut on a short. And so that means you have to meet those filmmakers that really almost hire anyone at the beginning because they have no money and they have very few options. And how do you find them? You find them, I found them early on mandy.com in my area, and I sent out 10, 20 emails, and I got maybe one meeting, and I didn't get paid much, but it's something to build narrative work and put it on your reel. What's really then the next step is that short should go into a festival, hopefully a B festival or better. If you can get into the International Moscow Film Festival, um, great. If you happen to live in Moscow, go to the festival and be there as the editor of that feature film, even though it's just a short and it's like in the short section on the, like in the morning at 7 a.m. they play that one time, and there's only 7 people that show up. 3 of those people will be the other filmmakers that also have shorts in that section, and you talk to those guys while you are an editor of a short, and you find out what's the next project they're working on, what are some of the challenges they face as filmmakers getting their feature off the ground, this kind of stuff. Meeting as many of those filmmakers at festivals, at parties, at events is really an important step of presenting yourself as a narrative editor that will get you jobs. Once you have a short, it's fairly easy to get another short, especially if it's a good one. And once you have 2, 3 shorts, you should be able to be in a position to get an independent feature film to hire you. So that's how I would pitch myself as a narrative editor, is to find cut anything that is narrative. Sometimes people don't even know what quality it is. It's just on your resume. You've been cutting shorts. That's really important.
So I asked on the chat room,
Yeah.
what are some ways you found to leverage up? So some people said making short movies with friends, and so that kind of shows off to other people what you can do.
Yeah.
So there's one way.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that option. I think that's a great option to actually shoot something.
Yeah. Then says other students around him asked him to do shorts based on that, and then companies kind of saw those and then started working with him. This is Erwin. And then let's see, another one was, I just made my first money editing from networking. Someone I knew paid me to make a Twitch stream for them. So yeah, reaching out even to online communities can help.
Having a YouTube channel helps.
Yeah.
Like doing videos on anything that you're passionate about and connecting with an audience can quickly turn into an opportunity to build your craft and maybe make a little living at the same time. It doesn't have to be a channel about filmmaking. It can be about baking with chickens. It could be anything. That's the story you're telling, and you're using editing, filmmaking to tell that story and find an audience.
Okay. And Erwin just put up an interesting comment. He said, I'm always afraid to show my work. It's very low budget, corporate videos mostly. I'm afraid I won't be taken seriously. So this kind of combines this leveraging up with the imposter syndrome we talked about earlier, I think.
Yeah. Well, Erwin, you showed one short and it was great. And oftentimes that's all I need to see. Like, I need to see one thing that is great to be excited. I remember Aaron did the same thing. He sent out an email to me and he showed me a short, and I was like, those 5 minutes just flew by. I really enjoyed it, everything about it. And that's all I needed to know, to have a proof of concept, to trust him, to go into a meeting. We talked and I could see, okay, he's I can trust him enough to try something out, and then we worked on a low risk project, and then now I'm like fully trusting him with bigger projects, and I'm referring him to other companies who are looking for editors. Cool. So Martin has a question. Go ahead.
How do you bounce back when a short film or feature you edited was considered a failure?
You don't get paralyzed. My first feature was a huge like it was, there's so much good about it and bad about it. The good thing about it is it premiered at the Men's Chinese Theater. That's the film right there in the background, and it was in theaters in like 15 cities. It's great, right? But that exposure also led to New York Times writing a just devastating review on the film, and just like, how dare you as a filmmaker make a bad film like this? And so that's pretty paralyzing for a first-time filmmaker to not realize that that's just part of the process. Part of the process is to suck and to have the audience hate you for wasting their time. And you have this taste level, you think you're good, but your craft is not there yet, and you need to bring it up. And the best way to deal with the fact that you edit something that was considered a failure is to just say, okay, fine, whatever, let's do it again, and keep moving forward. The longer you take to overcome that, the longer it's going to take you to get really good at it. So find another short and keep going. And nowadays it doesn't cost a lot of money to do good work. So keep doing the work, and at some point you'll catch up, your craft will catch up, and the audience will start loving you. Anything else?
No questions yet.
Okay, cool. It's 11:21. We're a little over. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being part of the course. I want to encourage you to stay involved, keep working the exercises. Please do the questionnaire. Really important that we hear from you to see where we're at with the course, and what we can do to make it better. And I'll see you on module office hours, probably in a month or maybe like 6 weeks. Will take some time. If you guys have time, hopefully you can join us. Vinny and Steve, thank you so much for being part of this. I'm going to bring in Dennis one more time for final words. Dennis, thank you so much for showing up. We're going to talk about module 4 next time.
Na zdrowie.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna show stuff, because you have obviously 4 or 5 scenes, so that's like a 10-minute, 15-minute thing. Maybe we'll go through it, and we'll just pick certain moments within the scenes that we'll discuss during the module. But we want to give you feedback, and we want to make sure you have the opportunity to hear from us directly on your work. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, guys. See you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
See ya. Thank you.